Wireless communications have evolved rapidly since the emergence of cellular technologies in the early 90s, from 2G networks which primarily supported voice and SMS to LTE which can allow users to stream HD video through their smartphones. The first African LTE conference took place in Cape Town recently, and we took the opportunity to explore the challenges around rolling out the fourth generation long-term evolution of wireless networks and whether African markets were ready for them. LTE is the next generation of wireless broadband technology that builds on the current 2G and 3G networks that most consumers are familiar with. With over 800 million mobile subscriptions in Africa, the wireless broadband market is set to take off.
But right now LTE is very topical. It's a lot faster, up to 2 to 3 times faster than current 3G, all things being equal. And it's more importantly, it's actually more stable and a lot quicker to connect and a lot quicker to use than the current 3G platforms. It also allows more connections at higher speed than the old 3G technology. So it's a very, very relevant technology for the coming age because everybody's usage of broadband is increasing exponentially as devices get better, as people download more YouTube videos, as their experience on the internet gets more and more rich with multimedia, with video, with all the other things that you sort of take for granted, but you tend to use more as the experience improves. So LTE is all about not just speed, but I think quality of experience, and we're going to see more and more of that going forward.
Many telecom operators on the continent have only recently begun rolling out their 3G services. A key question here is whether operators can afford the additional investment required to migrate to 4G LTE technologies.
So they've rolled out those networks, and in many cases the demand has not yet quite materialized. The phones that can really take advantage of data networks are not quite there. So as a result, these networks are not heavily utilized. They still need to be, the investment still needs to be recovered. And now we're asking them to invest in additional capex. And at the same time, they have the threat of new entrants, people who don't have these issues about 3G investments and historic networks, who can possibly come and snap up the spectrum and compete in a very difficult space and make life difficult for the existing operators.
Radio frequency spectrum is used to carry electromagnetic signals to anything from your garage door remote to satellite television. Government regulators generate significant revenue through auctioning spectrum to operators, as it is key in determining the coverage and speed of the network.
Right, so the spectrum is of course absolutely key. When we talk about wireless technology, I would say the spectrum is just the amount of oxygen you have in order to feed your customer. Yeah. So this is absolutely key. And what we're discussing with regulators all across the board is to try to find the best way to quickly allocate the spectrum which is necessary for this type of technologies. As the technology coexists in our networks, we have 2G, we have 3G, we're preparing for LTE. We need to have spectrum for all these elements. And currently, lots of the spectrum is still reserved for, I would say, operators or agencies which are not using it. So the regulator here needs to do something, come up with a model in order to allocate the spectrum efficiently, in order for the operators then to use it in their networks.
Delays in spectrum allocation in South Africa and other African countries came under the spotlight at the LTE conference, where analysts urge governments to speed up their efforts or risk hampering technological development on the continent.
Well, there are two key issues right now. One, South Africa is in the process of doing a spectrum audit and finding out who needs what and how to allocate that spectrum to the right people. There's a big debate about giving it to the incumbents like Vodacom and MTN and those guys who can use it immediately, or making it available to smaller players who would then perhaps enable a lot of other companies to get involved in the market. The big challenge in telecommunications, it's a scale business. There's not big margins, and those margins are dropping. And broadband prices are coming down, not going up. So more and more you'll find that the big players will need more spectrum to do it.
Founded in 2007, Smile Communications has been hailed as an innovative telecoms operator offering wireless broadband solutions to African markets. Sudhir Chopra is the Chief Technical Officer and touched on what he believes were the biggest challenges in rolling out LTE networks in Africa.
The two biggest challenges are to build the towers or to lease the towers. Now, since our model is based largely on outsourcing, we go for tower leasing rather than building our own towers. So the cost of leasing is still, it has come down in the last few years, but it is still not reached to that level that it can create a very, very affordable service. That's the first challenge. The second challenge is the backhaul. LTE being a very high capacity technology, the LTE base stations need very high capacity backhauls. And at a certain stage in the network, we have to enter into optical fiber. The biggest challenge is the availability of optical fiber in all these countries.
A major challenge facing the evolution of South Africa's wireless networks is that television signals currently occupy the key bands of spectrum that could be used to enhance wireless technology.
Digital television uses far less spectrum for the same or more delivery of channels. So a lot of spectrum then gets freed up for other uses. And globally, in America and Europe, they're using that spectrum for the delivery of advanced mobile networks like LTE. So the 800, 700, 800, 900 megahertz spectrum is key to the deployment of broadband networks going forward for the next 3 to 4 years. But we first got to get everyone to digital TV, which is a big challenge for South Africa.
There is ongoing debate whether African markets are ready to adopt LTE, as it is more expensive than 3G, which is still in the process of being rolled out across the continent.
So they selected a vendor.
Well, my point about the market readiness is that in order to roll out LTE or the next generation in mobile broadband, we need to have, I would say, 3 or 4 elements, yes? We need to have technology, okay, in place. We need to have an ecosystem of handsets which are suitable, okay? We need to have the spectrum for that, and we need to have a business model, okay? Now, if we take a look at the consumers, of course, this is just more data. And the tendency is, of course, you want to have more data at the same price. People are not really willing to uplift that. So we need to find the right business model, the right approach, and deliver that improved quality of experience at the right price point.
However, there are analysts who believe that certain African markets are ready to adopt the technology.
Yes, I think the market is very definitely ready. LTE is going to happen. We've already got 4 active LTE networks in South Africa. Yes, with limited geographic coverage, but consumers are ready to start adopting it because of the need for faster connectivity, more reliable connectivity, and most importantly on the LTE front is the incredibly low latency that the network offers, which is probably in the region of a 1/5 to a 10th of the latency that one can expect on a 3G network.
While there is still debate over whether African markets can afford to adopt LTE technology, the service is being rolled out across South Africa's major metros. With key African markets having over 100% mobile penetration rates, it is certain that mobile operators will be looking to LTE as a means to outperform competitors. Thomas Marie, Cape Town, South Africa.